Well, I guess we know who the Bearcats starting quarterback will be in 2023.
You are Locked On Bearcats, your daily podcast on the Cincinnati Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hope you had a great weekend. Thanks so much for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe to our Locked On Bearcats YouTube channel and follow it to get an alert every time that we drop a new episode. My name is Alex Frank, your host each and every day right here on Locked On Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, where today's episode of Locked On Bearcats is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. It is Monday, May 8th, meaning we are now officially 117 days away from the Bearcats season opener against Eastern Kentucky, Saturday, September 2nd at historic Nippert Stadium. We're also 10 days away from the day one tour coming to Columbus. Dan Horde, Wes Miller, Scott Satterfield, Katrina Merriweather, they will all be at the Brewdog Dog Tap here in Columbus. On May the 18th, they'll be in Cleveland the day before, and then Chicago in early June. By the way, I haven't even mentioned this. Look who's here if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're listening, you get my former co-host of Sports Any Way You Want It, my former color analyst and play-by-play partner at Bearcast Media, Zach Freeze from the Freeze Frame Podcast and Pro Football Focus. Zach, we were supposed to have you on last week. Here's the series of events. So we were going to record. My Wi-Fi was down. Then my computer decided to stop working. Then it started working. Of course, I realized that after I recorded on my iPad. And then you decided, instead of coming on the show, that you were going to go to trivia.
Yeah, Wednesdays, Wednesdays we play trivia. We do this thing called trivia. So
yes, I'm aware. I do too.
We're not very good at the game, but we play. We attempt. So
where's trivia?
Champions. I believe you're familiar. I believe you're familiar.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with Champions. Champion Sports Bar and Grill.
Yeah, good place, good trivia. So free ads, I guess, but hey, you know what? No sweat. Come on out.
No sweat indeed. All right. So lots happened since we've talked. Normally, when I have you on, we also have Sean McMahon from iHeartMedia Cincinnati on this show. But a lot's happened since you and I have talked. Most notably, or maybe one notable thing that has happened, is Ben Bryant has committed to Northwestern, which is, of course, near his hometown in the suburbs of Chicago. Ben Bryant is from, I believe, Glen Ellen, Illinois, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Northwestern, of course, is in Evanston. But what this means for the Bearcats, Zach, is I think now, officially, if there was any doubt, that's been removed as far as Emory Jones being the starting quarterback. Are you in agreement on that?
Oh, yeah, I think so. And I mean, there was like hope that, maybe Ben Bryant would see his options and decide to come back. But at the end of the day, he found a spot where he's going to go in and probably win the starting job at Northwestern. But now, yeah, I mean, I think it's Emory Jones's job. And like you said, in the spring game, he played well. And that's, I think, an encouraging thing after what was not a great camp from all accounts that he had. So, yeah, it's Emory Jones's job. I mean, I think we figured he didn't transfer in to be the backup. And I think he fits in with what Scott Satterfield's trying to do, more of a dual threat guy. We saw him run for 700 yards at Florida or something like that. So, yeah, it's his job now. I don't think there's much doubt, barring something crazy. It's Emory Jones's job, and I guess that's kind of it's good that Ben Bryant, now it's over and it's behind you, because now you can kind of focus on all right, Emory Jones can now take pretty much all the reps with the ones, and he kind of knows you're going to be the guy. There is no looking over your shoulder or splitting reps or whatever. And I'm sure, Evan Prater and Lichtenberg and maybe Brady Drogosh will still like try and compete. But I think the reality is, Emory Jones, sixth year guy, can't coming in, has experience, more experience than any of the other three guys combined. It's going to be his job come the start of the season.
Is this what you wanted? Is Emory Jones the guy you wanted to start a quarterback, Zach?
I mean, it's a tough question. I think I like Ben Bryant. Like Ben Bryant for all the crap he took last year at times, and he didn't have a tremendous season, but I thought he was solid for the most part. I wouldn't have been opposed really with Ben Bryant coming back and starting, to be honest. But I mean, for like, would I rather it be Emory Jones or just like what any of the other candidates? I'll take Emory Jones. We saw Evan Prater. He struggled. He's not maybe not the guy we thought he was going to be. I'm fine with Emory Jones. I'm going to give him a fair shot. He's going to get a fair shot from me, whether it works out or not. He's but he at least is a guy who has Power 5 experience as a starter, and we saw him play fairly well at Florida a couple of years ago. Now last year was a whole mess. I mean, it was a disaster. And he's not to blame for all that. Arizona State was incredibly just a dumpster fire with everything that went on there. So you can only blame him so much for that. So I mean, I'm okay with Emory Jones being the starter. Like I wouldn't have hated Ben Bryant coming back and just like seeing what would have happened, but just because like in case something were to happen to Emory Jones, if you have a backup there, a capable backup. But I mean, I'm willing to give Emory Jones every chance. I'm not. I'm hoping he does well, and it's we'll see what happens. But I'm gonna he deserves a fair shake, and we'll see what happens week 1.
Yeah. So I think for me, this is who I wanted to be the Bearcats starter. And I have a lot of respect for Ben Bryant. I've given him more credit than I think some fans have over the years, and particularly last year. But Emory Jones is a guy I've said to Bearcats fans to not expect much from, and I say that for two reasons. One, you're only gonna be let down because I don't think he's gonna be that great. I don't think he's gonna be Malik Cunningham. I don't think he's gonna be
Right.
Desmond Ritter. But number two is I think he could surprise you and how good and how much he can elevate this offense. So, like, what are you expecting? We got about 2 minutes before we got to hit this live read. Zach, what are you expecting from Emory Jones this year?
Well, I think he fits the mold. He fits the mold of a Scott Satterfield style of a dual threat. Ben Bryant obviously doesn't quite do that. I mean, I think you're getting a good athlete. I think as a passer, you hope for him to be a little bit more polished. But in terms of a guy that Scott Satterfield wants leading an offense, we saw like Malik Cunningham. He's not Malik Cunningham, but in that mold of a guy and an athlete, a good athlete. But like you said, I don't think the expectations are he's going to come in and just like be Desmond Ritter or just be like a all league guy or anything like that. I think you're right. Like you got to have some sort of expectations that like and a lot of it has to do with the supporting cast, Alex, right? Like all
Yeah.
new receiver room, everything's new. The O line is inexperienced. So I think you have to kind of give him a little bit of leeway on that, a little bit of like you gotta hang with him a little bit on that because that's tough for any quarterback. You got brand new guys you've never played with before, and everything's new. None of these receivers you have been around, and everything's new. So I think he's going to get a little bit. You got to treat it with kid gloves a little bit, but yeah, I mean, like you said, I don't think you hope he can put you in positions to win games. I'm not expecting him to like come in here and sling the ball around the yard for 400 yards every game, but just I don't want to say game manage because I think he could maybe be a little bit. His upside might be higher than that, but I just hope he plays turnover-free football and as much as he can and brings that, the dual threat ability with his legs.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm expecting. And I'm going to say this. I think Emory Jones is a guy who is going to have to play as mistake-free football as possible, because I don't know if this offense, compared to offenses in years past, if he's going to be if this offense is going to be able to overcome mistakes. So you got to play as mistake-free as you can. I think
Right.
running the football plays a huge role in that. So I'm a big fan of Emory Jones being the starter so long as he doesn't make too many mistakes. All right. So speaking of that, this week is unique because the NFL schedule is coming out. So we'll get to see where former Bearcats and the teams that they were drafted by, their schedules. We'll get to see the Bengals schedule. We'll get to see the entire NFL schedule. So let's take a look at the Bearcats schedule let's take a look at the Bearcats schedule and where we're at right now in terms of how we think the Bearcats are going to do. Plus, Ivan Pace Jr. Zach, I haven't gotten a chance to talk to you yet. Just your thoughts on how in the world a unanimous All-American went undrafted. We'll get into that after I explain to our listeners how this episode of Locked On Bearcats is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs, because right now new customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. There's no better place to bet all the NBA playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/lockdown and get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's FanDuel.com/lockdown. FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen of every day. For everyday listeners, on tomorrow's show, I'm going to do something that I'm really looking forward to doing. I'm going to give you 7 bold predictions for the 2023 Bearcats season. 7 bold predictions for Tuesday, May 9th. How about that? But let's focus on today. So, Zach, the Bearcats schedule, obviously that was released way back. I believe it was late January, January 31st, it might have been.
Sounds about right.
Trying to remember what exact day it was, I think. But anyway, the schedule's out. And look, I think it's really advantageous because you avoid Texas, you avoid Texas Tech, you avoid TCU, you avoid Kansas State, and you get 5 conference home games at home, 7 at home overall. Like, now that we are, I think you and I talked when the schedule was released. Where are you right now in terms of the schedule, how you feel about it, and if the Bearcats are going to be able to go to their 15th bowl game in 18 years?
Well, I think, like you said, I think the schedule is good in a lot of ways. They avoid Texas, they avoid TCU, they avoid Kansas State, and they avoid Texas Tech, who I think a lot of people are bullish on this year. I'm a little bit concerned. My concern lies with just depth on the offensive line and in the receiver room. And then everything's new, right, Alex? So
Yeah.
That's my worry with this team, and I mean there's still talent. Obviously, defensively, they're great up front. And when you have Corleone and Briggs and Malik Van back, that's awesome. But I worry about this O-line. Everything's new, and you have one guy back, you have one receiver back. That factor kind of scares me a little bit offensively, like how I'm worried about this team offensively. But as on the whole, look, I think it's still a manageable schedule. I said from the beginning, I hope we get to 6 wins. Like, I hope we win 6 games. I think that's about the number right now. I'd say if you made me pick, I would say 6-6. I wouldn't be shocked if they end up 5-7 or 7-5, I guess. Anything more than that, I would be pretty surprised. If they won 8 games, I would be over the moon. I would be really impressed, but I think about 6 wins feels right to me.
Okay. So you're in the boat of as long as they become bowl eligible, that's a successful season for you, right?
I think it's about as much as I think that's about as much as you can ask. Just like going into a new league, first year, had a lot of roster turnover. I just think that is about what you can hope
Yeah,
for.
I think you're right. And I, I am I'm more optimistic. I see a way this team can get to at most 8 wins. I think seven's more realistic. I said 8-4 last week in my schedule predictions. Now that might have been because I was so caught up in my technology, issues that I might kind of retract that a little bit. But I think what's so advantageous, in addition to it being that way overall, is you get your two hardest conference games out of the way right out of the gate. And then you play Iowa State and Baylor. And Baylor, I mean, let's not forget they were Big 12 champions in 21, but they were a middling team last year. Iowa State wasn't very good. Their defense was great, their offense was not. Then again, first year post Brock Purdy and Brees Hall, that's about what you expect. And I think you get Iowa State and Baylor. Oklahoma State's going to be a challenge on the road playing in that environment. UCF at home, I think the Bearcats can maybe eke one out there. West Virginia on the road is going to be tough. Kansas at home should be a win. I just see a way that this team does become bowl eligible. I don't think, and I think you have to understand that Bearcat fans going to have to understand there are going to be some growing pains when you go to the Big 12. It's not going to, I mean, they're not Ohio State. They're not Notre Dame. They're not, I mean, even though they beat Notre Dame, they're not Georgia. They're not Alabama. And I've been saying that to Bearcat fans for years, just because of what they accomplished the last 5 years. I probably told Bearcat fans this going into 2022, that just because they made the college football playoff the year before doesn't mean they were going to automatically go 12-0 again the next year. I think a lot of us, including myself, kind of got caught up in the expectations. Well, they'll lose to Arkansas, but then they'll win out the rest of the way, right? And I'm like, UCF. And then ultimately they lost to Tulane at home to end the season and finished 9-3. But this year is going to be a challenge. It's going to be, and I do think that the Bearcats are still going to be able to develop talent. It's just the games are going to be harder because you're going up against top tier talent every single week.
No question. You know, there's no Tulsas, right? There's no USFs.
Not like those games were easy last year, though.
Right, exactly. And I mean, that kind of goes to show you, like we even
Or
had
any year, really.
we had some adventures playing, you know, USF and Tulsa, some bad Tulsa and USF teams, and it's like now we're playing, you know, the Iowa States and the Oklahoma States and the Baylors. Like it's not going to be a picnic, you know. So yeah, I mean, look, I think 6-6, Alex. You get to 6 wins. I just think that with everything being new coach, new league, basically outside of the running back room, an entirely new offense. I think you hope, okay, EKU and Miami, God, you better win those. I mean, please help me if we don't beat Oxford. Jesus. Then you find 4 wins. Just find 4 wins. Whether it be Kansas, I think they'd have a decent shot. Iowa State, Baylor, I think those are, like you said, I think those could be hopefully wins. And then West Virginia, I think is going to be awful, but it's on the road. So win the 2 gimmies. So there should be 2 layups here.
Yeah.
And then find 4 wins, whether that be in conference. They play Pitt too. I think Pitt's going to be okay. We'll just hopefully we can find those 4 wins.
Yeah. All right. How stunned were you that Ivan Pace Jr. went undrafted?
I was pretty surprised. I know we talked about it last time I was on the show. I thought he would maybe go in the 4th or 5th round. But I think ultimately what happened is just the size, right? We knew that was going to be his knock, and there's already going to be some teams that he doesn't fit in terms of scheme, I'm sure. But at the end of the day, I think that is what cost him, and I am surprised by that a little bit. He would be an outlier. There aren't that many linebackers that are his size, so you have to take into account that NFL teams looking at that, and they'd rather take a flyer on a guy who's 6'3" and 250 instead of a smaller guy like Ivan Pace. So I am a little bit surprised, but I think the size thing, that's what did him in, obviously, and but he's been an underdog, before, right? And he ended up thriving at Miami. He comes here, he's an All-American. I think he's still got a good chance to be an impact player in the NFL. Like I think he could still find his way into playing meaningful snaps. I really do. I just think he's that good of a football player.
Yeah.
And whether it be from Minnesota, like I'm not betting against him making that. Like I'd place a bet on him if I could to make the roster. I just think he's a really good football player, and he's been doubted before, and he's won every time. So while I'm surprised, I mean, hopefully this motivates him, right? Like hopefully,
Yeah.
you can look at it like you can sulk you didn't get drafted, or you can have you know, a bad attitude you didn't get drafted, or you could use it as fuel and motivation. And he's going to get a shot with Minnesota. So I hope he can prove more people wrong.
No question about it. All right. So, and I do think that he will play now with an even higher motor than he played with
Yeah.
last year at Cincinnati. All right. So, obviously, since the last time we talked on this show, Zach, there's been some big news from the hardwood. Simas Lukosias. Just how much does he elevate the Bearcats men's basketball program, even getting back to the big dance? We'll get into that. Zach, so you're well versed in college basketball. You host a college basketball podcast, the Freeze Frame podcast. You're a big Bearcats basketball fan, season ticket holder. Just how much is Simas Lukosias going to be able to elevate this Bearcats men's basketball program?
Alex, I really like Simas Lukosias quite a bit. I liked his game at Butler just from watching from afar. He's a crafty player. I mean, he's a son of a coach, and it's easy to see that. I like his game because he doesn't look as big as he is. You think, oh, he's not that big, but he's like 6'6", 230. So, and for a guy of his size, he handles the ball pretty well. I mean, he's a pretty good shooter. Last year, I think he shot 38% from three. Was a capable rebounder. I like his game. I just think, he averaged 3 assists a game. I think he's a good passer. I think he's just like, I don't like stereotyping like the European kind of player, but like that's kind of who he is. He's smart. He's crafty. My only concern, and I think he can come into the Big 12. He played in the Big East and was pretty successful last year, right? So I think he can come in and be a starter right away. I think he can be an impact starter for you day one in the Big 12. The only concern I think on him would be defensively. He's not great. He's not a crazy good athlete by any stretch. That might be a concern, and also how can he play the four? He's 6'6", 6'7", in that range. I'm curious of how they'll use him, what lineup they would use him with, because I think more ideally he's a wing. He's playing one of the wing spots, but he could shift down to the four. I just think, with the roster construction, if I think you see like they have 3 bigs they feel good about, but if one of them gets hurt or goes into foul trouble, I think ideally you want someone to be able to play the four, and I think he would have to step into that role. Can he do that on the defensive end would be my question. But I really like Simas Lukosias' game. I think he's going to fit in well.
Yeah.
Uh, you needed somebody like this who is a difference maker. They've done it at a high level. They've done it in the Big East. I'm a fan. This is a good get for Cincinnati.
Yeah, so you talk about Lukosius and what he's going to bring, but how much is he going to elevate this team? Because I look at the roster now, Zach, it's coming into pretty good shape.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think you look at they've got 13 scholarships. They've used them all. So,
Yeah.
barring a change, this is what the roster looks like now. It could change. You never know. There's still time. I think players still have until May 11th. So never say never. You never know with the movement and so many moving parts in college basketball now. Look, I think you look at this the transfer portal cycle. I think Wes Miller did a good job. I think they needed another big man, and Jamil Reynolds fits in with I think what they need, and they need another scorer in the post, and I think that's something he's good at. You needed shooting, and I think CJ Frederick, if he's healthy, if he's healthy, I think he could be a great shooter. We get closer to that Iowa CJ Frederick. Now, there's no guarantees in that, but that would be, that was hopefully is a box you can check off. And Simas Lukosias too. I mean, he's a pretty good shooter. He shot, like I said, 38% from three. They needed someone. I think Landers Nolly is a better player than Simas Lukosias, but they needed somebody kind of in that mold that can like play make a little bit, can handle the ball a little bit, has the IQ, the like Landers could. He had that craftiness a little bit with the ball fakes, and I thought he was a great passer. I don't know, Simas Lukosias. I don't think you're expecting him to come in and be Landers Nye, but you needed somebody in that mold, like a wing like that, and I think that's what you needed, and they got. So, look, I mean, I'm more optimistic, I think, than most about this team. They have a point guard now too, Alex, and they have Jizzle James and Davion Thomas. And I know those guys have never played D1 basketball, but I think they're really good athletes. I think they fit what Wes Miller wants in a point guard. And no disrespect to Mike Adams Woods, he's just not a super athletic guy that gets downhill and can get to the rim. Jizzle James and Day Thomas can do that, and hopefully can do that. I know it's a big ask in the Big 12 year one for both of those guys to be able to play at a high level. But I like the mold and I like the fit of those guys in Wes Miller's system. And then I think a lot of what hinges with this roster is Dan Skilling is going to have to develop. He's going to have to become a guy who is going to have to be more consistent offensively, right? We saw last year the flash, but I think he's a guy, tip of the iceberg guy. He's an outstanding rebounder. If you're going up for a rebound, you're going to lose, and you're going up against Dan Skilling, you lost. But offensively, he's going to have to take a jump. That's huge. He's kind of the X factor. How does he develop in his second year? Because they still need some scoring pop, and he's the guy that would hopefully can bring that. So
yeah,
I'm optimistic about this team, probably more than most.
I agree with you. I just think there's a lot more talent on this team. I think there's a lot more versatility. I think there's a lot of excitement surrounding this team. It's going to be really nice when you see that schedule come out, the conference schedule come out in September, and you're seeing Kansas. Kansas just added the best transfer in the country, perhaps, in Hunter Dickinson. It's going to be a fun battle between him and Victor Locken when these two teams get together, however many times, 1, 2, 3, heck, maybe 4. So there you go. Zach Freeze from the Freeze Frame podcast and Pro Football Focus at Freezy27 on Twitter, and my former co-host of Sports Any Way You Want It, and my former color analyst and play-by-play announcer partner on Bearcast Media. Zach, it's always great to have you on, and we'll talk soon, all right?
Alex, thanks so much for having me on, and happy Coconut Cream Pie Day to everybody.
Is that May 8th?
Hope everybody has a wonderful Monday.
Is that on May 8th?
That's on May 8th.
Coconut Cream Pie Day.
Get yourself a coconut cream pie.
I don't know if I'm a fan of that.
I don't know.
I'm in apple pie will always be my favorite. Okay. I like let me see.
Pumpkin pie. What about pumpkin
Not
pie?
a big pumpkin pie guy. I know that's
Salad.
an unpopular opinion. I've just never really I've never gotten into it.
right.
Lemon meringue I can go for.
That one I don't like.
Okay.
That one I think is vile.
Key lime is really good.
Yeah.
Blueberry pie is good. I feel like it's too basic though.
Cherry.
I mean, I could go on for pies about this, but
Yeah. Come for the if you made it this far, come for the Bearcat analysis. Stay for the pie takes.
Yes. Now I'm more of a cake guy than I am a pie guy.
Okay.
Actually,
right.
I forgot my one pie I just started really liking, Boston cream.
Okay. All right. I can rock with Boston cream.
So good.
I'm not a huge. The problem with cake for me is I don't like too much icing. I don't like
you don't like too much icing. Yeah, you're gone. Have a nice day. Jeez.
Oh yeah. You like it. You're the guy that loves like the big glob, like balloons, like
icing on the
that
cake. Yes.
Too much.
Yes.
Too much.
Although my favorite cake, German chocolate.
Okay, I don't know if I've had
German chocolate, red velvet, and New York cheesecake.
Cheesecake's good. Cheesecake is elite.
If you don't like cheesecake, you're not American. On that note,
ice cream cake. So
can't do ice cream cake. I've never been able to do it.
All right.
You can serve me cake and ice cream, just not together.
All right. Well.
All right.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
Thank you, Zach Freeze at Freezy27 on Twitter. Freeze Frame Podcast and Pro Football Focus. That's going to do it for me today. Great week coming up for you. Russ Hellman will join me at some point later this week. I've got Luke Braun efforting, Locked On Vikings, Ivan Pace Jr. So much to get to. I'm on Twitter at Frankie_90 with 2 N's and an ATI. Instagram, AlexFrank_. Email, alex3frank@gmail.com. Also try and get Neil Meyer at the front office news on the show. Back tomorrow. Thanks so much for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen every day. I'm Alex Frank for Locked On Bearcats, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.